help them.
Hello and welcome back. This is The Thing About Cars, recording in Atlanta, Georgia. It's another beautiful day outside. Recording in Strongbox West, as usual. Completely tripped up on my own tongue there. Some quick housekeeping items. Please check out our Patreon page. If you like us, we would welcome your support in getting new gear for the show. We are fundraising for better microphones and maybe better recording.
Please give us your money. Thanks.
Right.
We appreciate you a lot.
At the table again, we have another very, very full house.
Yeah.
Katie.
Ronnie.
Becca.
And I'm Mickey. Real quick, I know that this topic has been hammered to death in other forums, but I keep hearing it come up amongst friends and other people who think that putting nitrogen in their tires is a really cool and nifty thing.
And it's somehow beneficial for gas mileage.
And it's somehow beneficial to the car and the gas mileage. One, why does this exist? And two, is it worth it? Ben?
Well, to take that in reverse, no, it's not worth it.
Okay. It's not worth it.
There's a great video on YouTube. What is that guy? He's
half
angry, but very informative. Who is that guy again? He did a whole episode in nitrogen in the tires, and he explains the science behind it and why it's a bunch of bunk. Do you remember?
I can't think of what his name is, but
let's find it and post it when this episode goes to online. But my thing is, if you're driving an extremely high-performance vehicle where that kind of thing matters, like a Formula One race car, maybe it matters. On the other hand, the air that you're breathing right now is over 70% nitrogen. So how does filling a tire with just 100% nitrogen actually benefit anybody?
So the original science behind it, well, I don't even know if you can really call it science. It was marketing. Mm-hmm. We know how marketing likes to finagle science sometimes. Nitrogen molecules are bigger and more consistent than standard air molecules. And so if you have any kind of leak anywhere on your tire, whether it's a little bit of a gap in the seam of your tire or the valve stem has a little nanometer gap or whatever, nitrogen is supposed to not leak out of that, which sounds cool, but new tire and valve stem technology and manufacturing is at the point where just regular air will not leak for 8 or 9 months. If you can't get around to checking your tire pressures every 8 or 9 months, or stopping by a gas station, or heck, go to Discount Tire. They have a free air check where they literally do everything for you.
Plus TPMS sensors.
Right.
Yeah.
If you don't have the time to do that, you should really back me up by making the nation switch into a more efficient form of public transportation.
Well, we need Atlanta to do that over.
We're surrounded by people who look at car maintenance as an issue of convenience, right? I mean,
Right.
They don't think about it until something's gone wrong.
Right.
Which segues into the next topic on the board, which is a fellow who wrote on Reddit that he noticed his transmission was full of burnt/dirty automatic transmission fluid. He pulled out the stick and everything in there was brown and not a healthy pink color. So the question that he had written was, does this mean that he shouldn't change the fluid? Because there's apparently a misconception that burnt transmission fluid in the case shouldn't be replaced because the new transmission fluid means that the burning transmission itself will slip. So keep the burnt fluid in the case until the transmission dies. And I'm thinking that's a huge mistake. But what do you guys think?
I don't know.
I was waiting for Ronnie to jump in. I had made a comment earlier, and he had something to say, so I was waiting.
Yeah.
I do have the answer, but I wanted to see what everyone else had to say first.
Well, here's what I think.
Sounds like hooey to me.
Right. I think it's complete hooey. I think that if you're the kind of person who hasn't checked your transmission fluid before it got burnt, then
right.
Then that in itself is the problem, and it's anyway. Ronnie.
Okay, so when it comes to burnt transmission fluid, it's hard to call any kind of fluid burnt. Burnt insinuates that it came close to, I mean, you can't really say it was catching fire, but it got to the point of evaporation. Like, it reached that point where carcinogens actually infested it. I think
it's powder at this point.
Right. I think the person was just saying that the fluid's dirty.
Maybe spent is a better word.
Yeah, spent would work well also. But usually in this kind of situation, what you're dealing with is a lot of particles from the internals of the transmission just kind of mixing with the fluid. And the fear that a lot of people have is that if you flush the fluid, the transmission goes bad. And the reason that happens is kind of twofold. So you have all these little particles floating around in your transmission, right? If you flush it, which means you're applying pressure through the entire transmission, all those little particles are kind of tearing up more things as it flows along. And automatic transmissions are made of very, very precise little valleys and check balls and springs, and it doesn't take too much to knock one of those out and kind of screw you over. Also, there's a philosophy that a lot of those little particles are holding what's called clutch plates together. Those clutch plates rely on pressing up against each other to make your car move forward. If you flush all those little particles out and you kind of increase the gap between those clutch packs, that's where a lot of your slippage starts happening. It takes a little bit more time for them to catch, and in that time that it takes for those clutch packs to catch, they're crashing on top of each other instead of just kind of merging, and that wears them out faster. The more shock value there is to the transmission, the faster it goes out. So this is the best solution I can provide to anyone that has quote-unquote burnt transmission fluid. Whenever you do an oil change, simply drain whatever transmission fluid you can. Just take the drain plug out, put it back in, and then refill it with fresh fluid. It's going to take somewhere around 6 or 7 changes, but eventually you'll get enough fresh fluid in there.
It's like weaning.
Right.
Look at it like weaning.
You're not forcing all the fluid out, and you're not forcing all those valuable particulates out, but you're still exchanging the fluid to do its job, which is to lubricate the entire transmission and help maintain a healthy temperature range in which the transmission can operate.
Interesting, because my other thought on the matter was exactly what the folks online said, was that replacing spent transmission fluid with fresh transmission fluid is not the problem. Most people who notice that their transmission fluid is a weird color probably haven't looked at it until something has already started going wrong. And then they drain and fill it with fresh fluid, and they're thinking, oh, doing that is what broke my transmission.
But there was already a problem. It wasn't what you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to point out also, you're not just changing fluid. What he was saying was the pressurized flush.
Mm-hmm.
So drain and fill like an oil change, just don't flush.
Correct. And what you said is accurate as well, Mickey. If you do have a problem and you think fluid is going to magically fix it, no, the problem doesn't go away. It's not like a lot of those vehicle gremlins where, sometimes your AC works, sometimes it doesn't type thing, or, sometimes it makes a squeak and then other times it doesn't, and then the mechanic listens and then it never comes back, or, it's not a phantom problem like that. Once the transmission's toasted, it's toasted. It doesn't matter what you do to try to save it. If you're not low on fluid, then it's probably destroyed.
It's probably already gone.
Yeah.
All right. So, which leads to our next item on the board, which is Ronnie. What is in your garage? What's in Ronnie's garage?
Dear God.
What's not in Ronnie's
And what
garage?
have you loaned out recently?
Yeah. God, there's so much that happened in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I got an E46 M3, which one of my very good friends covets dearly. It's it's ridiculous. It's so mint. And he bought it this way. It has Porsche brakes, like 14-inch calipers, has these very rare BBS wheels on them that sell for about $1,100 per wheel. Has a Bilstein PS2 sport suspension, which
We
is
just
like...
need a field trip to Ronnie's garage. That's all we
Is it
need.
about $1,100?
Ronnie and his buddies.
Right.
The wheel cost was what I was
Yeah.
making noise at. The
Yeah,
Pontiac's
same.
wheels are $2,000 each.
It's an obscenely gorgeous M3, and I mean, I like E46 M3s, but this one in particular is really fantastic. And he just bought it back from the person he sold it to several years ago because he wanted it, and so he got it. And he left it with me to do the rod bearings, which is a well-known failure point on the S54 engine. And it's not an easy job. It's one of those jobs where I don't care how many I have under my belt or how many times, it's been done. I always get nervous because I'm at the very core of the engine. And if I mess up, the whole engine messes up. And that's a bad feeling. So thank God I got that out of the way. Another E46 M3 came in, which I'm installing a slide brake on. He's a this friend of mine is a stunt driver and one of the best in the area. He's what I hope to be in terms of stunt driving. He's a brown man that's a little bit older than me. That's just he's awesome. He's a great guy. So I'm installing his slide brake. I have a Lamborghini Gallardo, which I'm doing an oil change on. Great customer also that's very reasonable and patient with me. And he just kind of left the car with me and said, yeah, you just hang on to it, do the oil change and whatever else it needs.
So are any of these jobs fun?
No. And I think I got to the point where I got jaded, and a lot of that has to do with the engineers that I've dealt with at BMW, where I thought the car was such a masterpiece, and then I talked to the bozos that made it, and I was like, oh God, what happened? And it wasn't, I know I'm really mean to BMW, but it wasn't just BMW. I mean, Porsche's kind of the same way. Lamborghini and Ferrari is kind of the same way. Volkswagen, I mean, they kind of shot themselves in terms of how stupid they are. Dodge, similarly, like there's just a lot has come to the surface in terms of how little these companies actually know. So I think the most fun I have with working on any of these cars is when people swing by. While I was doing the Lamborghini oil change, a few friends stopped by. And they filmed it, and they kind of just absorbed the atmosphere of my shop. Anyone that walks in there is usually taken back a little bit, varying ranges on people's experiences there. But that's kind of what entertains me the most in all of this, being able to show people and teach people things that they only dreamed of when they were little kids. And especially with people that didn't even know that they were car guys or car people at all. They'd be like, oh, we think cars are all right. And then they walk into my shop and they're blown away. And they're like, holy smokes, this is remarkable. It's always cool to share that, especially when they see a Lamborghini half torn apart next to a 430 Scuderia, next to a 458 Italia, and next to a classic 356 SC. And it goes on and on.
All right.
So there's a lot of stuff to be done. Oh, and my 240 broke down, which is great. Dropped it off to get my front tires replaced. And every time I take my vehicles to this tire place, my car is broken down, and I don't know why. And it's not their fault. They're great people. It's a Discount Tire. I don't mind giving them a shout out. They do great work. They have great pricing. But every time I go to pick up my car, something is wrong with it. And I know it's nothing they did because they're a tire shop and they don't touch the engine or the electronics or anything along those lines. But it's just a whole mess of things going on right now that won't fit in a single category. I will say to those of you that are listening, I have noticed a lot of people that have dying batteries. Take your vehicles to AutoZone or Advanced Auto and do a free battery check. Get your alternators and batteries checked on because you don't want to die on the side of the road.
Katie's nodding her head.
Yeah.
Voice of experience here? Or?
Yeah, I used to work at AutoZone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally worth it. I mean,
Yes.
I don't. If my battery dies, I go to one shop and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to. I'm not like our superstar Becca over here who can find a brand new discount
brand
battery
new.
for $40.
I think it was like 60, but still,
Yes.
good like that.
Cool.
So.
How are we doing? Okay, so also on the board, who was it who was talking about a potential competitor for Tesla?
It was me, and I was never able to find the name of it. It was not a name I was familiar with at all.
So a newcomer.
It was one of those I had seen in passing as an advertisement, and I was thinking it was an advertisement on Facebook. I couldn't remember. I thought I had taken a screenshot of it, and I was not able to locate what the heck I did with that.
Okay.
Although the electric BMWs are looking prettier than they used to.
This was something, yeah. Oh, that, what is that
The
one?
early
X
one that looked like a
something?
smart car, and it was just ugly.
Well, we were just trying to figure out the name of the car, and Ronnie had one, and Katie had one, but Katie found it's the Neo.
The Neo.
Yeah, I actually just saw something about that yesterday. The same article I showed you.
Okay,
And I was just like, what is this?
So there's a guy, I can't find it. We're going to have to cut a lot of this out. But Ben, the i3?
Yeah, that's the little funny looking boxy one.
From BMW.
Right, yes.
And then the i8, which is the low-lying pancake car.
That
Right.
thing sucks. Sorry.
Does it really?
Yeah, it's awful. We have one in the shop. Brand new ones. They came, great BMW feature, with leaking fuel tanks.
It's a skater.
And it's like, it's so embarrassing. Like,
Leaking fuel tanks.
yeah, it came with 10 miles, and I think my friends said there were 7 or 8 that came through the shop with just leaking fuel tanks. It's like, the car cost, what, $138,000 new? And that's what you're presenting, and it doesn't even perform all that well. Looks super gorgeous,
Sure.
but you can't sell a car with a leaking fuel tank.
You're reminding me of that joke. Ben has heard me tell this joke. Why don't the British make computers?
Why?
They can't figure out how to give one an oil leak. Katie.
Yeah, we get a lot of i3s at Carvana,
Yeah.
and I do not like driving it. I don't like driving them because it's electric and all that. When I let off the gas, I could be going like 15 miles an hour, and as soon as I let off the pedal, it just goes to like 0. It stops.
doesn't coast?
It does not coast whatsoever, and I hate it.
That doesn't seem right.
It's on every single one. Like, I've driven probably about like a dozen by this point, and every single one it does the same thing. It does not coast whatsoever, and it's just annoying. And
Yeah.
Well, that has to do with the regenerative systems on hybrid cars, or not hybrid cars,
The electric
and
cars.
electric cars
Yeah.
in general, because wheel rotation assists in the regeneration of the battery.
So it's taking your momentum and turning it back into electricity,
right.
Uh-huh.
So
which is why it doesn't coast.
right.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. But
Well,
then,
you'd want to drive it differently anyway, just because of the differences in the powertrain. You'd use your throttle differently than you would with a gas engine.
Yeah.
and you would think that the lease on Leafs would do the same thing, but they don't.
Leafs are turds, man.
but the Nissan Leaf,
I
As
wanted
far
one
as-
when I thought I could still afford a 2013 or newer.
but a Nissan Leaf, at least to my understanding, drives like an actual car. And-
Yeah.
Yes.
But it also has an 80-mile range, aside
Yeah.
from the most recent model.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for inner city driving, that's not a bad idea.
But when it takes 12 hours to recharge it,
Yeah.
like, I have a really hard time defending the Leaf. We used it on a few movies, and if we didn't have 4, we wouldn't have
It
gotten
was
the
a good
shop
learning
full.
point for us all about electric vehicles.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Is there an electric vehicle that is really, really worthwhile? We've talked about Teslas having terrible reliability ratings, even though they're sexy and fun to drive. We've just talked about why certain electric cars do the whole regenerative charging thing, which is why they don't coast. Top Gear once made fun of electric cars, and their, I think, very correct assessment was that the problem wasn't the car, the problem was the batteries. And so, batteries are all crap, and therefore, how do we more efficiently distribute electricity to cars? And they very jokingly had everyone sit into a bumper car ride at a fairgrounds, which are being charged off a grid, and the car gets powered by a big power cord that's coming off the back of the car. I don't know what the answer is. Are we ever going to get an electric car that's really foolproof and lovely? And
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
I'm confident.
But isn't that kind of like saying the car is sexy and great except for the engine? I mean, when it comes to electric cars, batteries are kind of important.
Yeah.
The battery
get
technology
there.
has plenty of room for improvement, I think, is the point.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
I would agree with that. And I think there are a lot of new technologies that are around the corner to really step up battery technology, but I personally don't think electric or battery is the solution. I think fuel cell is the direction that we're going to have to go, but I don't think that's going to happen until it's more of a political statement to say, I think we need the grants and research to drive that need. Because if we're making batteries and electric work the way we are now, if we actually just requested a solution instead of, hey, let's make batteries and electric work because there's political benefits to it,
yeah.
then I think we would be able to come up with something pretty genius that would, displace fuel.
All right. That's a rather serious note to end the show on. That's everything we have on the board, except for the one thing where Ronny had said we should probably talk about the best bang for your buck performance modifications on your car, but we should save that for another day.
I think that's a whole episode
I
in
think
itself.
that's a whole episode.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody got anything else we can quickly wrap up on, or housekeeping, or anything? Nobody?
Please support us on Patreon. it would be much appreciated. Patreon.com/thethingaboutcars. We are always looking for sponsors. If you have any feedback, please feel free to email us. Jump on our Facebook page, The Thing About Cars. Leave us your questions, your comments, your feedback. If you want to be Becca's sugar daddy, she is still searching.
So I can have that Tesla, Ferrari, Lambo hybrid. Oh yes, but also give us your money for the Patreon, so we get this up and running.
The Patreon
guys.
thing, we are,
then please subscribe to our podcast.
and we are doing the fund. We're not idly trying to raise funds through Patreon. We are actually looking to get money to get better recording equipment, new microphones, new gear,
Headphones for everyone.
Headphones, the whole shebang. So thank you for your support. Thank you for listening to us as always, and we look forward to being with you again during the next episode. This has been The Thing About Cars. As always, in Strong Box West in Atlanta. We will see you guys soon. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Thing About Cars. We'll see you on the road.